Hello, it's Ryan from 2MinuteTennis.net, and in this video, I'm going to compare the backhand techniques of Carlos Alcaraz and Novak Djokovic. Now first, this video of Alcaraz is courtesy of Liam Appilato over at Court Level Tennis on YouTube. And on the right here of Novak, we've got 12 KGP Tennis, both from YouTube. I put their links in the description below. Just awesome, awesome tennis content. So you got to check both of those channels out, and please subscribe to them. All right, so I'm looking at these backhands, and to me, there's just no comparison when it comes to the technique. And, it's obvious, it's easy to say that when you got a 20-time Grand Slam champ here on the right. But let's look at the technique. When it comes to Alcaraz, you can see what he's doing with his racket, very similar to what we saw with Berrettini, where a lot of the younger players are keeping the racket to the outside of the hand. And what happens here when you keep the racket on the outside of the hand is it creates really a pre-stretch. It's really the two-handed backhands version of the pre-stretch. You see that his strings are facing down, and then with Novak, his strings are facing directly off to the side. Now, I want to show you what Novak does first. So what I'm going to do is we're going to look at Novak's right hand. So we're going to check out his right hand first. So I'm trying to get his hand at the highest point right there. So here is his right hand. And his right hand is there. So his right hand, let me actually make that circle a little smaller. There we go. So his right hand just went like this. His right hand dropped down in the back. Well, obviously his top hand is going to follow suit. So his top hand's going to go like this. So his top hand goes with it. So it's this drop down. And then if we take the racket, I'll make that blue. His racket's going to go like this. So watch his racket. His right hand, his left hand, and his racket, they all make this move. Now, let's compare Alcaraz because he does not have gravity-assisted racket speed that you see with Novak. This is all gravity-assisted racket speed. Everything's going down with gravity. So let's check out Alcaraz. So we're going to look at his right hand. There we go. And so we're just going to move his hand, and you can see it doesn't go really down from that initial point. It just goes forward. So his right hand, remember, Novak's right hand went down from yellow mark to yellow mark, right, with that green line. So his green line is just going straight forward. So then we look at his his left hand. All right, so his left hand is basically doing the same thing. So his left hand is making this move, just basically going forward. Now the racket is making a move that's similar to what Novak is doing. So let's see where we can get the racket. So this racket's kind of going like this. Now, here's the difference. This is gravity-assisted racket speed. His arms, his hands, the handle of the racket, the throat of the racket, the butt cap, the tip of the racket, everything is going down. Where with Alcaraz, it's not. What Alcaraz is doing is basically doing a pre-stretch backhand here. Now, here's what happens with this. When you watch Novak and the hands go down and the racket goes down, this is what I teach my students. Hands go down, racket goes down. What happens is you get this high, low, high swing. So you can see his racket follow that. His racket's up by his head, it goes down, and then the racket goes up. And if we look at his hand, his left hand, if I just draw a line straight across the top of his head, it's easy to see that his left hand is higher than his head. When we look at Alcaraz and we go to his follow-through, we can look at that same line and his hand is not above his head. What happens with Alcaraz is he doesn't get, first off, the spin potential that Novak is going to get, but it produces a whippiness. In fact, we can see that whippiness right here. As his racket falls, his racket actually opens. So here his racket's closed, and then his racket, as it falls, like right here, his racket is now straight over. When we watch Novak when his racket's falling, as his racket falls, the racket closes more. So with Alcaraz, there is more calculating that he has to have on his backhand. Now, is he a world-class player? Absolutely. World-class athlete? Absolutely. So can he handle this type of swing? Absolutely. But what happens with this type of swing is it creates more variables and it can become more difficult to handle this type of swing rather than Novak. I mean, there's a reason why Novak's backhand is so good. It's so clean. It is so simple what he does. There's really nothing complicated and calculated about his swing. It is hands go down, racket goes down, turns his hips, closes the racket face, swings up and out. He's got the left side of the letter V, which means there's no wrist at all in his backhand, which makes him so consistent and accurate. Where there's a lot of whippiness in Alcaraz's backhand. Sure, can that produce racket speed? Absolutely. But there's a cost to everything. And the cost is going to be consistency and accuracy. And you can see the racket is slightly off to the right of his hands, where Novak in this same position is off to the left. And by the way, this is Alcaraz hitting straight ahead, and Novak is hitting the ball cross court. And they're hitting the ball at the same speed. This isn't, some chump on the other side. That's Marin Cilic. And here's Rublev. I'll actually, I'll connect their shots again, and I'll take you, and I'll connect them. Watch this. They actually have identical split steps. There's their split step right there, which means their opponents are hitting the ball at the same time. They're hitting the ball at the same time. And then their split step is the same again. They're hitting the ball at the same speed, and Novak's hitting this ball cross court without using any wrist. So highly recommend that you copy the Novak Djokovic backhand. All right, let me show you what this looks like in front of the camera. Now, to help me demonstrate both backhand techniques, I've got the Topspin Pro here. You know what to do. Check out my affiliate link in the description below. I'll even pin it in the first comment. It would mean the world to me if you got a Topspin Pro using my affiliate link, so thank you so much. All right, we've got the Alcaraz backhand technique, which looks like that. And it's similar to what we saw with Berrettini a few days ago when I did an analysis on his. Not 100% the same, but it's similar. And the Novak. And the Novak is this. So I'm a big fan of the Novak swing. It's very much in line with what Vic Braden taught over 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, right? So what I would recommend is that you use the Novak Djokovic swing. So what do you do in order to do that? You film yourself from the back, and you could film yourself shadow swinging, film yourself hitting on the Topspin Pro, film yourself during your next lesson, whatever it is. But when you turn, I want you to try to avoid this position right here. Now, I do want to say, if I'm giving a lesson to someone, and when they turn on their backhand, they turn like this, and their racket's wide open, and that typically produces a big roll of the wrist, and that player typically struggles with consistency. I will tell that student, or I will show them, without them really knowing why I'm doing it, I will show them the Alcaraz turn. I'll say, hey, I want you to try this new upcoming way to turn for a backhand. I want you to turn with your racket face like this, close. Keep the racket on the outside of the hand, and then just drop and swing, and I want to see what happens. You know what happens? The racket looks like Novak Djokovic, because they're used to this. So you have to teach the extreme and the other end of the spectrum, and then they meet in the middle. So there is value in teaching something to get the actual result you're looking for, which there's science to teaching, and there's also art. To me, that's the art of teaching, isn't just to be right and go, I'm going to teach them this. Okay, well, if that doesn't produce the result you're looking for, then you didn't teach them much, or you weren't effective as a teacher. So I think the best teachers get the best results no matter how they have to get them, which means that it's not about how correct their information was. It's the end result of the student, which is what matters the most. So if I tell someone in the future to do this in order to get this, I absolutely will do it. But ultimately, I want them to do this. When your racket is on the outside, what happens is as it drops and your hands pull forward, there's a layback in the racket. Well, that layback is then going to produce something in the end. The backhand is our, as Craig O'Shaughnessy says, it's our shield. It's our reliable shot to defend, and we want to be able to rely on it where our forehand is our sword, and it's the way we attack. The idea of having the backhand be something where we're trying to produce a ton of power, and we're figuring out a way to be able to snap the racket through contact, to me, it's just not going to produce the results that the forehand can, because the forehand can produce a lot of spin, more spin than you can get on the backhand. So by doing this on the backhand, you're kind of turning your backhand into not as good of a weapon as your forehand, and not as reliable as the backhand could be if you use the Novak type of swing. So when you make this move and you film yourself and you see you're in this position, you're going to see your racket have to lag back. And then what typically happens is after you hit, the racket then is to the right of your hands, if you're right-handed. So what I would recommend is that you truly work on the Novak turn. I wish I had it. Here we go. I'll use like a marker here. So imagine you got a marker and you just want to think of balancing, right? So Djokovic, when he turns, can balance a marker. Alcaraz is like this, and the marker is going to fall off. So you want to turn with it straight up and down. You could think of it as you're in your ready position and then turn, and then when you face your racket, you're back in a ready position again. Like the two-handed backhand turn is just a ready position behind you. But the key here is this, is that the racket and the hands go down together. This is gravity-assisted racket speed. So what you got with Alcaraz is the hands are going forward and then the racket lays back, and then it's just this snap of the wrist as he's hitting, or what I call casting. What I want you to practice is the hands and the racket go down. Now, one way that you can do this is to actually let go of the racket as you practice and you shadow swing. And please shadow swing. It's super important that you're shadow swinging at home to ingrain this and give yourself the muscle memory, or what we call muscle memory, of getting the signal from the brain sent to the body and over again. Try letting go of your racket like this and then catching at the bottom. So let go, catch, and then hit. So it's turn, because once you let go, then the only way it can move is down. And so you'll catch at the bottom and then hit. So it's turn, let go, catch at the bottom, and then hit. That's just an old trick in order to help a student, especially someone who takes too big of a backswing. If you just have them let go, if they let go, the racket's not going to go this way. It can only go back. It can only go down. It can't go back. So it's an easy way to get the student to stop taking such a big swing. But another benefit to this is when you have the gravity-assisted racket speed, rather than having to get racket speed from creating a lag and then like more of a snap as you're hitting, is another benefit is the finish that we saw with Djokovic. So the finish that we saw with Djokovic is called the left side of the letter V. So he lets go, basically. You could think of it as he's letting go. He's not. But he lets go, gravity-assisted racket speed. Then he swings away from his body. You want to swing inside out so that when you're hitting the ball, you're actually getting pure topspin. So you swing inside out. But as he rotates his hips and his body toward the net, you can see that his racket is still to the left of his hands. I would say Novak does this on the backhand at least 50% of the time. The racket stays to the left of his hand. I would say 1 out of 10 times the racket goes over slightly, but the majority of Novak's swings are to the left like this, and maybe like 30-40% the racket straight up and down. He has very little play in his wrists, and the reason is because he goes down with his racket and hands together. So nothing's going forward and lagging and snapping. There's none of that. I'm noticing a trend with a lot of the younger players using this type of lag and snap backhand. I would absolutely say that's not in their best interest. I think it's important. Any time you want to accomplish something, you want to look to those who have done it before you, right? And so who else did this type of swing? Andy Roddick had that type of on the outside pull through and swing. I was not a fan of his backhand whatsoever. You can't even put those two in the same class. And I loved watching Andy Roddick as a player, but you can't even put their backhands in the same class. And I'm noticing that it's almost like the players now aren't just looking at the best and doing what I just did and just doing a side-by-side comparison. What does my backhand look like compared to Novak's? And then looking at the differences and going, oh my gosh, my Novak's hands are going down with the racket, where my hands are going forward and I'm snapping. Is my backhand better than Novak's? Is his backhand better than me? I think it's really important to kind of look at the greats, look what they're doing, see what you can copy from them. There are some things we shouldn't copy, but when you're Carlos Alcaraz, you can basically copy anything you want from, I would say he's just as athletic as Novak Djokovic. So he can really start to look at everything he's doing and copy it. So Carlos, if you're watching, copy Novak Djokovic in his backhand. But please film yourself. I love making these comparison videos because The pros are very close to each other. What they do is very close, but there are some who have better technique than others. And when it comes to the two-handed backhand, you just aren't going to find a better technique than Novak Djokovic. So get a Topspin Pro, practice your technique at home, film yourself, and see if you can copy the Novak Djokovic backhand. And if you do, there's no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. You got this.